Very good morning, guys. So in yesterday's class, we started discussing about how the dipole means here electric dipole, how the electric dipole will behave when it is placed in a uniform electric field. So whenever an electric dipole is placed in a uniform electric field, it will experience a torque. The formula to find out that torque, tau is equal to PE sine theta. Tau is torque, tau is equal to PE sine theta. It is a vector quantity. So tau bar is equal to P bar cross E bar. If theta is equal to 0, that is if the dipole is placed parallel to an electric field, it will experience the minimum torque, which is equal to 0. If theta is equal to 90, that is, if you place an electric dipole perpendicular to an electric field, it will experience the maximum torque, which is equal to PE. And moreover, whenever an electric dipole is placed in a uniform electric field, it will experience only torque but not force. Whereas if an electric dipole is placed in a non-uniform electric field, it will experience both force and torque. So those 2 points I given yesterday in note, those 2 points are very, very important. And as far this is concerned, when the torque is minimum, when the torque is maximum, what is the direction of the torque? These are all will be asked for 1 mark questions in PUC. Okay. Next thing is, I am considering a uniform electric field. This is one uniform electric field. In that uniform electric field, I placed an electric dipole. So electric dipole is nothing but we know two equal and unlike charges are separated by a certain distance. Initially, it makes an angle theta 1. Now I want to rotate an electric dipole. Now I want to rotate an electric dipole. To an angle theta 2. I want to rotate an electric dipole to an angle theta 2. Now in order to rotate, as I said, whenever an electric dipole is perpendicular to an electric field, it will experience the maximum torque, that is, which is in unstable equilibrium. Whereas whenever an electric dipole is parallel to an electric field, it will not experience any torque, that we call it as the stable equilibrium. So whenever a dipole is placed at a certain angle, definitely it will experience a torque. Because of that torque, it will always tries to go equilibrium conditions. As we know, whenever anything is in excited state, definitely it will always tries to come to the normal state. In the same manner, it will always tries to comes to the stable equilibrium. But here against to that, we are rotating. So that electric dipole tends to align in this direction. We are rotating in opposite direction, opposite to that. So whenever you are rotating opposite to that, so that means we need to do some work here. How much work has to be done? How much work has to be done in order to rotate an electric dipole from an angle theta 1 to theta 2? From an angle theta 1 to theta 2. Then at a time, I cannot rotate an angle theta 2. So I will rotate small angle, small angle, small angle, small angles like this. So the formula to find out the work done in case of a linear motion, work done is equal to force into displacement. If the displacement is the small displacement, then the small work has to be done. So these dW is equal to F into ds. This formula will be used in case of a linear motion. Whereas here we are rotating a dipole. Since we are rotating a dipole, it is a rotational motion. Then what is the formula to find out work done in rotational motion? W is equal to, the general formula is F into displacement. The equivalent term for the force in rotational motion is a torque. The equivalent term for the displacement in a rotational motion is an angular displacement. Then the formula to find out the work done here, W is equal to tau into theta, where in linear motion work done is equal to force into S, here which is tau into theta. But here actually what we are doing, we are not rotating to an angle theta 2 suddenly. We are rotating an angle d theta, d theta, d theta, d theta like that until it reaches to theta 2. That's why to rotate a small angle, so if the angular displacement is very small, small work is sufficient. So dW is equal to tau into d theta. dW is equal to tau into d theta. But actually our intention is to rotate from an angle theta 1 to theta 2. In such a case, we have to go with an integration. W is equal to integral of dW. From where to where I am rotating? I am rotating from an angle theta 1 to theta 2. Integral of dW is nothing but integral of tau d theta from theta 1 to theta 2, where tau is equal to Pe sin theta. As we know yesterday, tau is equal to Pe sin theta into d theta from theta 1 to theta 2. From theta 1 to theta 2. Where P is the dipole moment. So the dipole moment P is equal to Q into 2L. So the value of dipole moment depends on the charge and the length of a dipole. It does not depend upon the angle of rotation. So P value is a constant. I will bring the P out of the integration, where E is an electric intensity. That electric intensity is also constant here. So I will bring the E also out of the integration. Now which one is a variable while rotating? The theta value is a variable. Since theta value is a variable, I will write integral of sin theta d theta. From where to where? From theta 1 to theta 2. So the formula to find out the work done while rotating an electric dipole from an angle theta 1 to theta 2 is Pe integral of sin theta d theta from theta 1 to theta 2. From here, W is equal to Pe integral of sin theta minus cos theta. From where to where I am integrating? I am integrating from theta 1 to theta 2. Integral of sin theta d theta is equal to minus cos theta. Minus cos theta from where to where? Theta 1 to theta 2. First I would like to substitute the upper limit. That is Pe into minus cos theta 2. First upper limit I am substituting. Minus. Then after lower limit, minus cos theta 1. From here, W is equal to Pe into cos theta 1 minus cos theta 2. W is equal to Pe into cos theta 1 minus cos theta 2. So where this this much of work we need to do, this much of work we need to do while rotating an electric dipole from theta 1 to theta 2. Okay, so if theta 1 is equal to 0, if theta 1 is equal to 0, that is nothing but an electric dipole is placed, the electric dipole is placed parallel to an electric field initially. Now I am rotating this. If theta 1 is equal to 0, then W is equal to PE cos 0 minus theta 2 is equal to theta, if I call, minus cos theta, which is equal to PE cos 0. Cos 0 is equal to 1 minus cos theta. So this is the formula, general formula. Will make use the amount of work required to rotate an electric dipole, from an angle 0 to theta, from an angle 0 to theta. Now, so this work done will be stored in the form of a potential energy. This work done will be stored in the form of a potential energy. So therefore the potential energy of an electric dipole when it is rotates by an angle theta 1 to theta 2 is equal to PE cos theta 1 minus cos theta 2. If you take generally to find out the value of PE, we'll take theta 1 is equal to 90 degrees always. Why? Because so here in case of the potential energy, the change in potential energy will play the major role. The change in potential energy will have the significance meaning. That's why theta 1 is equal to 90 degree and theta is equal to theta 2 is equal to theta. If you take, then potential energy is equal to, so PE cos 0 minus cos theta, cos 0, sorry, cos 90 minus cos theta. Cos 90 is equal to 1 here, sorry, cos 90 is equal to 0 here. Then we are going to have minus PE cos theta is the formula to find out potential energy in case of an electric dipole is rotated in an electric field. If theta is equal to 0 degree, that is an electric dipole is placed parallel to an electric dipole, I mean electric field. If an electric dipole is placed parallel to an electric field, then U is equal to minus P into E. So which is the minimum. So if theta is equal to 0 degrees, the potential energy is a minimum. So, and the torque is also minimum. That's why it is called as the stable equilibrium condition. Right? Okay. So if theta is equal to 0, cos 0 is equal to 1. So minus P into E. So the potential energy is minimum. If theta is equal to 90 degree, if theta is equal to 90 degree, then cos 90 is equal to 0. Since cos 90 is equal to 0, the potential energy will be 0. So this is the condition for the 0 potential energy. If theta is equal to 180 degree, if theta is equal to 180 degrees, means like this, then cos 180 is equal to minus 1. So the potential energy is equal to maximum, which is equal to plus PE. So with this, we can conclude the concept called as an electric dipole. So based on this, the formulas are important. Based on this, the problems are very, very important. Okay. As for electric dipole is concerned, what are the important questions? One is the electric intensity at any point on the axial line of an electric dipole and equatorial line of an electric dipole. Next thing is the torque experienced when an electric dipole is placed in a uniform electric field. So these are the questions important. As far as this work and potential energy is concerned, the formulas and the conditions, these conditions are important for 1 mark and 2 marks. Okay. Next we'll go with Gauss theorem. Gauss theorem. So what is the necessity of using Gauss theorem? Generally, where and when will make use of Gauss theorem? That question arises. So whenever you felt difficulty to find the electric intensity by using Coulomb's inverse square law. So according to the Coulomb's inverse square law, we have a formula to find out the electric intensity. E is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by r square. This is the formula what we got by using Coulomb's inverse square law. What is the restrictions of a Coulomb's inverse square law is it will be used only for the point charges. Coulomb's inverse square law will be used only for the point charges, and that too those charges are located or fixed in certain location, or those charges are located at certain fixed positions. Then only we can make use of this Coulomb's inverse square law. Okay, if 3 charges are there called Q1, Q2, Q3. Now I want to find out the electric intensity at this point P. Then here is also we can make use of these formula. Here we'll get a E1 and here you'll get a E2 and here you'll get a E3. The total electric intensity is equal to E1 bar because of vector quantity, E2 bar plus E3 bar. By using the vector addition, we can get the total electric intensity at this point. That too we are using this formula because of we know that Q1, Q2, Q3 are at a fixed positions. Whereas in case of uniform distribution of the charge. So what do you mean by this uniform distribution of the charge? For example, you take a wire. So this wire having a charge Q, but the charge Q is not located at any fixed point. That charge Q is distributed uniformly. Because of this entire charge, what will be the electric intensity at this point? Because of this entire charge, what will be the electric intensity at this point? Then we cannot make use of this Coulomb's inverse square law now. Why? Because we don't know how much amount of the charge here, but we know the total charge. Total charge is Q. But here how much charge is located, how much, we don't know. So here, to find out the electric intensity by using the Coulomb's inverse square law is very difficult. That's why there will make use of one special theorem called as a Gauss theorem. So whenever you felt difficulty to make use of Coulomb's inverse square law, then we'll make use of Gauss theorem. Before going to the Gauss theorem, I would like to introduce one concept called as electric flux. Now you got an idea when to use Gauss theorem. Whenever you feel difficult to make use of Coulomb's inverse square law to find out the electric intensity, there will make use of Gauss theorem. Now, what do you mean by this electric flux? Electric flux, or simply we call it as a flux. It is denoted with the symbol phi. Electric flux. Electric flux is nothing but the number of electric line of forces, passing normal through a given surface or given area of the surface. The number of electric line of forces which passes normal through the given area of the surface. So for convenience, I can say, for example, this is one surface. In that surface, I am considering one area. Through that area, how many number of electric line of forces which passes normal? Here, this is the only one electric line of force which passes normal. That's why here the electric flux we can call it as a 1. For convenience, I am saying, for convenience. Whereas, that is nothing but only, what my intention is, only normal lines we have to consider. Only normal lines we have to consider to calculate the electric flux. Now, this is one area what I am considering. Now the electric line of forces which is passing like this. So this electric line of whenever or wherever the electric line of forces are there, there will be an electric field. So here electric field is there. Electric intensity is acting like this. Then but it is not normal to the surface. Then I need to resolve into two components. One is the vertical component and one is the horizontal component. If the electric field makes an angle theta with the vertical, then the electric intensity in this case is equal to E cos theta. In this case is equal to E sin theta. So while calculating the electric flux, the parallel ones are not necessary. Only the normal ones has to be considered. So E cos theta only has to be considered while calculating the electric flux. Now, here, as we know, whenever the electric lines of forces are crowded, we can call it as stronger electric field. Whenever the electric lines of forces are foreign, now we can call it as this is a weak electric field. This is weak electric field, this is strong electric field. So on what basis will you decide either it is a weak electric field or strong electric field? Is based on the electric line of forces for a given area. Based on the electric line of forces for a given area. In a small area, if more electric lines of forces are there, more electric intensity. In a small area, less electric lines of force are there, there will be less electric intensity. So based on that, with your permission, I will write. So magnetic lines, electric line of force is nothing but flux only. E is equal to, flux is nothing but the electric line of forces. That too, again I am telling that while calculating the flux, we have to consider only the normal ones. Only the normal ones. So E is equal to flux by area. E is equal to flux by area. That too, one small area I will consider. Small area will be considered as a ds. Small area will be considered as a ds. So here the question arises, is the area is a vector quantity or a scalar quantity? That question arises. Otherwise, before that, the electric intensity is nothing but the electric line of forces per small area. So here flux is nothing but what? The electric line of forces which passes normal. As I said just now, here the normal ones is equal to E cos theta. Parallel ones not necessary to consider. Then I will write E cos theta is equal to flux by area. Only normal ones we have to consider while calculating phi. Therefore, phi is equal to E ds cos theta. Phi is equal to E ds cos theta, where it is in the form of AB cos theta. It is in the form of AB cos theta. We can write A bar dot B bar will be the AB cos theta. So I will write E bar dot ds bar. So phi is equal to E bar dot ds bar. So if you observe keenly, here ds is nothing but an area. Area I am considering as a vector quantity. But the question arises here, either area is a vector quantity or scalar quantity. So basically the area is a scalar quantity. It is not a vector quantity. Area is a scalar quantity. Whereas whenever you consider a small area, so by examining that area, if you are able to explain the properties of the entire surface area, so that is nothing but your intention, your concentration is always towards the small area so that they analyze the entire body. In such a cases, in case of or simply we can say, in case of small areas, we may consider the area as a vector quantity only in case of small areas. So this ds bar, I am calling it as an areal vector now. Since it is an areal vector, it must have both magnitude and direction. What is the magnitude of this areal vector and what is its direction? So ds bar, I will write, ds will give its magnitude, andre idi ds. What about its direction? Its direction will be always normal and outwards. Its direction will be always normal and outwards. That is nothing but n cap. Okay. So this is the way to represent an areal vector. The areal vector is equal, its magnitude is ds and its direction will be always normal and outwards. Normal and outwards. Very, very important point. After this, you note down the direction of areal vector. The direction of areal vector will be always outwards and normal to given area and normal to given area. So as we know now, the standard formula of flux E ds cos theta. The standard formula of flux phi is equal to E ds cos theta. If you consider the entire flux is normal, this is called as a total normal electric flux. That means entire electric intensity is normal to the surface. Then what about the value of theta here? The value of theta, idi theta ra. This E is acting along normal itself. The value of theta is equal to 0. Cos 0 is equal to 1. Therefore, phi is equal to E into ds will get. So, in case of the total normal electric flux, phi is equal to E into ds. Okay. For example, if the electric intensity is inverse, or first we will consider if the electric intensity is outwards for the given area. Electric intensity is outward. Andre, electric flux is outwards. Electric intensity will exist because of the electric flux. Whenever there is an electric flux, we can say there will be an electric field. So, electric field is outwards is nothing but the electric line of forces are outwards. So that is nothing but the flux is outwards now. Now as we know, what is the direction of areal vector? Areal vector will also outwards, normal. So the flux is outwards and the areal vector, as we know, it is always normal and outwards. Now what is the angle between these two? What is the angle between the electric field vector and the areal vector? So theta value is equal to 0. So in this case, theta is equal to 0. If theta is equal to 0, phi is equal to E into ds. Cos 0 is equal to 1. So whenever the flux is outwards, then it has to be the value what we are getting plus. That's why the outward flux is always positive. The outward flux has to be considered as a positive in order to the sign convention. Sometimes outward flux will be there, sometimes inward flux will be there. So both we cannot take it as a phi because of opposite directions. If one is the positive, other should be considered as a negative. So when we have to consider the flux as a positive in case of outward flux. Outward flux andre if the electric intensity is outwards. Whereas if the electric intensity is inwards, but as we know the areal vector will be always outwards. The areal vector is always outwards. Then what is the angle between these two? What is the angle between these two? The angle between these two now 180 degree, because one is inwards and one is outwards. The angle between electric field vector and areal vector is 180 degree. If theta is equal to 180, cos 180 is equal to -1, then the flux is equal to minus E into ds. Flux is equal to minus E into dx. So I can consider now the inward flux is always negative. Next point, continuation this. Inward flux is always negative. Inward flux is always negative. Next, as we know, E is equal to pi by ds or E cos theta, no problem. So pi is equal to E into ds. So the SI unit of flux, the unit of electric intensity is Newton per Coulomb. The unit of area is meter square. The unit of electric intensity is Newton per Coulomb, because electric intensity E is equal to force by charge. So the unit of the force is Newton. The unit of the charge is Coulomb. The area is meter square. Newton per Coulomb meter square. Then I can write Newton meter square per Coulomb is the SI unit of electric flux. Is the SI unit of electric flux, or we can write the practical unit is, Weber. Weber is also the unit of electric flux. Generally, if we ask what is the SI unit of flux means, we have to write Newton meter square per Coulomb only. I hope in 2020 he asked the same question, right? An SI unit of electric flux. Then what is its dimensional formula? Dimensional formula of electric flux. Dimensional formula of electric flux. As we know, flux is equal to E into ds, whereas E is equal to F by Q into ds. F is nothing but the force. The dimensional formula for the force is mLt power minus 2 by doing the mass into acceleration. The dimensional formula for the charge is AT. The dimensional formula for the area is meter square. Meter represents length. L square is the dimensional formula. From here I can write m L cube T power minus 3 A power minus 1. M L cube T power minus 3 A power minus 1 is the dimensional formula for electric flux. Force by charge ml T power minus 2 AT into L square. So m L into L square L cube T power minus 3 A power minus 1 is the dimensional formula for electric flux. So as we know, as we got the formula, E is equal to flux by area. So that's why generally E is nothing but, still now we are calling it as an electric field intensity or electric intensity or strength of an electric field or electric field strength. Ella onde E. But here because of we are using the new formula in terms of the flux, so that's why the E is also called as electric flux density. Electric flux density is also nothing but electric intensity only, is also nothing but electric field strength only. Electric flux density. What is its unit now based on that? As we know, the unit of electric flux is Weber. The unit of area is meter square. So Weber per meter square is the SI unit of electric flux density. Okay. It just go through our study material as per this flux is concerned. What is the flux? And again, thoroughly try to read today. And tomorrow, we are going to discuss the Gauss theorem and its applications. The Gauss theorem and its applications, which are very, very important for 5 marks. Tomorrow, we'll finish off this chapter. Thank you.